Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Live at the Waterhole. We're first up once again. We're at the Tamala Waterhole in the Madikwe Game Reserve of the Northwest Province of South Africa. My name is Ralph Kirsten. And as per usual, what does the bush hold in store for us today? Well, we can see once again at Jamala lots of elephants. Absolutely incredible time spent here with it being so hot over the last few days. There's just been so much activity from the elephants here. It looks like for now mainly bulls, but I'm pretty sure we can expect to see some of the breeding herds coming through as well. Looks a little bit more overcast today than it has been, and the heat wave, well, maybe we've broken the back of it and it's going to cool off a little bit in the next while. And also, as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience. So we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on Twitter, now known as X, using the hashtag WildEarth, also on the YouTube live chat. We'd love to hear from you, and that's any of your questions and your comments or what you would like to talk about or any ecological concepts, etc. I would love to chat about anything that you would wildlife related. So looks like it might be a bit of a cooler day here, but with that in mind, let's go and have a look what the weather's going to be like across all the different locations. So it looks to be a typically hot summer's day all round. There's a splattering of rain potential here in the Madikwe Game Reserve. This is on the border of Botswana in the Kalahari region. And as I say, it's still very hot, but it's a bit cooler than it has been in the last few days. It's been wonderful seeing all the different dynamics with the elephants and their social interaction, lots of communicating. There's been rumbles as well as trumpeting and all sorts going on. So it's lovely to listen to them here, and we've got a lovely perspective from this camera as well. So, Keanu, thanks for your comment. And yeah, it is cooling down a little bit, not quite to what the animals would find comfortable, I think, but at least it's a bit cooler than the last while. We've had over 100 elephants here in the last few days, as well as buffalo. There's been lots of zebra. The warthogs have been sneaking in, as well as the impala when they can get a chance. The elephants give them a gap. Otherwise, it's been a bit tricky because they've been dominating this waterhole. A small little breeding herd here as well, joining the bulls. And you can see how muddied the water is as well because of the animals that have been churning it up and wallowing in the mud. So, Oliver, thanks for your question. And a breeding herd would be the females with the youngsters. So there will be some males within that group, but it's normally the youngsters, sort of pre-12 years or so of age. And then once the bulls get to between 12 and 15 years, then they start moving off on their own. But the females generally stay within the same breeding herd, as we call it. And then Sometimes you have some small bachelor herds of males that move together, but they can also be solitary. There's a little bit of consternation here between these elephants. Yeah, just where the fresh water is coming out. So that's where they prefer to drink. And sometimes they do get a little bit competitive there, fighting over that little stream of water that's coming out. So a couple of good mornings and a guten Morgen from Kabela. And that's wonderful. Whenever I'm out on Amakala with Morgan in particular as the camera operator, then I always say guten Morgen as a double-edged sword. So nice to see that you remember that. Or if it's just by chance, guten Morgen straight back at you. So Lenny one, you're holding up for some kitty cats. Happy Tawny Tuesday. Let's hope that's what we can do. But with it being very hot, the chances are slim, but you never do know. What we can pretty much guarantee when it's very hot like this is what you're seeing right now. Lots of elephants. They do struggle with thermoregulating, and that's obviously why they've evolved these massive ear flaps as a kind of natural radiator. And then they come down to the waterhole to assist in that thermoregulation, spraying nice cool water and mud that sticks in behind the ears and helps them to keep cool.
Get ready for a flurry of feathers and beaks. WildEarth is celebrating BirdLife South Africa's 39th Birding Big Day. Join our naturalists on drive as they compete to spot the most bird species across locations during Sunset Safari Live. Don't miss out on the fun. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
So no real tiny babies around for now, but there are a couple of youngsters there. You can see that one that's clear on the left here. Just see the little tusks that are sticking out, and you normally see the tusks emerging around 2 years of age, sometimes a little bit more. Each animal is an individual and they grow faster or slower, but on average it's around about 2 years of age. Oopsie doopsie, we've got a bit of a camera on the loose, but there's obviously just some guests that are also enjoying this wonderful sighting of elephants at the Jamala Lodge. So with being able to see those little tusks there on that youngster, I would say, and they've grown a little bit as well, I would say that that individual's probably around 3 years of age or so, between 3 and 4, I would say. So we've chatted about elephants at length over the last few days because of how many of them there've been around. We've been talking about their social structure, chatting about the wrinkles on their skin and how it aids in the thermoregulation, adding more surface area to their bodies. We've spoken about their ears and the fine network of bloodstream that goes through there. Spoken about their tails and how the vertebra sort of goes all the way to the end, and then you've got this moustache-like hair that comes out on either side of the end of the tail, but very thick, that hair itself. It's almost like plastic when you see it in person. Still see lots of flapping now of the ears. Everybody's just trying to keep cool. Now, please remember that this is a remotely operated camera, and sometimes it has a bit of a mind of its own. So apologies if it does go out of control sometimes. So you can see that bull that's been kicking the mud around there. He's doing it again. He's got a bit of a floppy ear, this right ear of his. And I've seen that individual a few times. I'm pretty sure that it's the same one. Broken tusk and that floppy ear. It's quite similar, the cartilage in their ears to ours, and if you have an injury or an infection in the ear, it's sort of what creates that floppiness around the top of it. That's now just hanging down. Probably an injury that's caused that, and then infection, and then it's sort of affected that cartilage. So just speaking of the heat and how the animals are sort of, have got techniques, methods, strategies for counteracting or helping them survive in these difficult conditions, and how hot it's been with this heat wave that we have. And there was a question earlier from David Gray, who asked, if the animals start to die because of the heat and you believe it is human induced, will you be helping the animals? Not sure how you'd go about that, but just interested to know. So it's an interesting question because, there's a lot being said about climate change and the heating up of the earth, whether it's a natural cycle or not. I think in some ways, in lots of ways, we've definitely assisted in speeding up the cycle that we seem to be going into, and what a lot of the research suggests. So generally with wildlife, when you have changes in the climate, the weather, the environment, etc., the animals are forced to adapt and to change to be able to survive. So, and this through evolution, and then the next generations will obviously have changed as well, or continue to change, and then become better adapted to survive in that changed environment. When it's sped up, though, the animals struggle to adapt at such pace. So it can be a difficult thing to achieve. And you might have, obviously, species that can't adapt quick enough and may not survive. So if we say that it is human induced, or we've assisted in heating up the climate and changing the environment for these animals, well, it's difficult because we can't turn the sun off. So we can't really stop the heat. What we can do, though, is try to always make sure that there's enough water availability, especially because when it gets hotter, the animals will require more water. But it's also going to affect the plants and things that they feed on. So it's going to be interesting to see in the years to come how the animals do adapt. But all we can do as humans, without being able to turn the sun off, is just continue being and maintain the water availability, and obviously the management of the flora is of utmost importance. So the management would just have to be on their toes and making sure that these resources are still available for the animals, and hope that they're able to adapt. So a bit of dust bathing going on the opposite bank there. If you're wondering what that is in aid of, well, normally the elephants, they sort of have a schedule at the waterhole of coming to drink first. That's normally their top priority. So they quench their thirst and thereafter start cooling off. Sometimes they can also, if they're very hot, cool off as well quickly before they go for a drink. But generally it goes drinking, then spraying themselves full of water, and then sort of caking in that cool mud with dust. And it just makes that cool layer of mud last longer. So it's part and parcel of their sort of their strategy of thermoregulation. They do it also at the hottest part of the day, generally, and then use it the cooler parts of the day and night for fueling these massive bodies and these mega herbivores that are walking around. So they need to take in a lot of calories, and obviously need to spend a lot of time firstly getting into the areas where they will find good feed, then actually going through the act of feeding, breaking off branches and leaves and grass or whatever it might be, and getting it into their mouth, ground down and swallowed, and then moving and getting more. So it does take a lot of calories and energy to do that, and they need to replace it, obviously, with the food intake and the plant protein. And so they sort of then land up in this cycle of when it's very hot during the middle of the day, this is where they spend their time cooling off, maintaining their energy that they would normally have to expend flapping their ears and trying to find shade. Here, at least they can cool themselves off with the water itself, and then when it's cooler, go to feed. So yesterday we also spoke of the different social structure groupings within elephants as well. You get herds, which is your general breeding herd, and then bachelor herds of bulls. And then you get bonds and clans. So the bonds would be, and clans would sort of be made up when these groupings do come together at places such as this, next to a water hole, and you'll have multiple breeding herds together, or you can have a breeding herd and a bachelor herd together, which is what we're seeing now. So this would be a little bit of a clan, but they could also maintain a bit of a bond when they move away from here and they stick together for a while. So we're sort of seeing all the different kinds of social structures here when we have concentrations next to the waterhole, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Do you want to know more about the spotted cat of the festive season? Join Gabe and Cedric for a Cheetah Chase AMA this International Cheetah Day.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cedric Dold.
Ask our expert naturalists any cheetah-related questions and learn more about the quickest predator of the safari.
Yeah, it's gonna get it. Oh!
Watch it live and come along for the fun. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
Oh, and a blue wildebeest coming to see if it can squeeze itself in and have a drink. I think today is a better day than yesterday for the other animals wanting to drink. There were just so many here, especially over the last 3 days. But now it's sort of opened up a bit more. Not so many Ellies today. So as we watch the shifting dynamics between these individuals here at the drinking point, and that little baby also just rolling around in the background there. On the topic of climate change and African wildlife, I've found a nice little write-up on the African Wildlife Foundation, And they say that shifting weather patterns have complex impacts on natural systems, many of which are the cornerstone of Africa's economic developments as it grows rapidly. The continent's biodiversity is a vital natural resource at stake as overall temperatures rise. With rainfall projected to increase in East Africa but significantly reduce in the south, the risk of flash floods and harsh droughts is very high. Many iconic wildlife species have been pushed close to extinction due to various non climate stresses like poaching and illegal hunting in the last few decades. Over time, climate change has emerged as a silent threat to wildlife, as changing weather patterns trigger shifts in habitat composition, forage availability, as well as access to water. So, all those things that we were speaking of. The impacts to ecosystems are far reaching. Wildlife reproduction and the survival rate of young ones can lower, changing the competitive relationship between the species. So, conserving the water requirements of key species is obviously of utmost importance. And as the largest mammal on land, the elephant has significant water needs. One elephant can use up to 150 to 300 liters per day for drinking, bathing, and spraying water on their bodies to cool down, all of which we're witnessing now. And we've also witnessed the dropping level of this waterhole, even though it's continuously being replenished. These communal water-based activities are central to their social makeup as a species. For the black rhino, males only establish breeding territories where there's permanent surface water, while the water-dependent white rhino need frequent mud baths for thermoregulation and keeping off parasites. Hippos spend over 12 hours a day in water bodies ranging from rivers to man-made ponds during dry seasons, and the depletion of natural water habitats due to rising temperatures presents the species with a variety of challenges. Overcrowding allows for the faster transmission of diseases, while infighting over shrinking territories has also resulted in the loss of lots of males. The threats are exacerbated by climate change. Human wildlife conflicts take various forms outside protected areas, from poaching, livestock killing, and crop destruction to habitat encroachment. Climate change impacts like drought, habitat loss, and spread of diseases has led to increased conflicts in wildlife areas. The lion is just one iconic species that continues to bear the brunt of retaliatory killing as a result of human wildlife conflict. It has reduced in population size and geographic range across sub-Saharan Africa. Lions are also vulnerable to extreme weather conditions like droughts, which can disrupt their reproductive cycles as well. The cheetah is already suffering from a lack of genetic diversity due to inbreeding in fragmented populations. Reproduction rates are poor, and the few offspring that survive are more vulnerable to disease. However, the cheetah's high resiliency to drought conditions, as well as their ability to live in a variety of places, means that, like the leopard, the species may be able to tolerate climatic fluctuations. So we've always spoken about how cheetah have sort of reached a place of no return. Maybe we will be surprised, in fact, that with climate change, they may be the ones that are better adapted to be able to survive, because they can go for long times without water. And if there's extended droughts, you may see that the cheetah are the ones that actually hang through. So habitat loss has drastically reduced populations of giraffe that were once widespread across the continent. Although they are also able to withstand extended dry seasons, ecological limits like rivers or man-made structures may impede their ability to disperse climatic condition change. So, and just to finish on that, climate adaptation strategies for a developing continent in Africa. Although different wildlife species experience climate change in different ways, many vulnerabilities are common. As such, adaptation strategies can be implemented across priority landscapes. In addition to securing natural water resources and habitats, wildlife migration routes must be protected to ensure, and as well as these corridors that we've spoken of, to ensure more suitable habitats for at-risk species and enable genetic exchange between populations. And the African Wildlife Foundation maintains critical wildlife corridors through various participatory schemes that minimize human-wildlife conflict and incentivize land protection. Ecological monitoring in protected areas and buffer zones allow rangers to create adaptive conservation plans to protect vulnerable wildlife populations targeted by poachers and illegal hunters. They also employ sniffer dogs at major ports, on trafficking routes, and running awareness campaigns in demand centers. And while Africa is not a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, I would say slightly to the contrary, especially South Africa. I think we have a massive carbon footprint. Massive developments in infrastructure, agriculture, and extractive industry across the continent often come with the clearing of wildlife habitats. Adaptation strategies must manage development sustainably to mitigate the climate-related impacts on wildlife and wild lands. So it's a system that is in flux, and I think if we just better manage our resources, especially around water, I think we'll keep the animals in good stead as well. And that little youngster there now looking like he wants to do a headstand. He's maybe just feeling the first little growth of his tusks. And now, or is he just doing a roly-poly? It's like he's going to get pushed over by his sibling. So, Mariette, nice question. Yeah, I definitely think you see it a lot with the males, where they do enjoy their alone time. Very happy-go-lucky, but you can see that they often wander off on their own and spend days, sometimes weeks, like that. I've witnessed with the desert elephants, bulls that go for months on their own. Down into the secret parts of the Namib Desert in the ephemeral rivers. And then obviously when they come into must, that's when they go seeking out the females. You don't generally have females that move off on their own. There's, sometimes you have breakaway groups that form, but there's normally, at least 3 or 4 of them that will be in that group. So a highly sociable animal, very gregarious, and I think they do really enjoy the social contact between each other, and they even do sort of seek it out. There's something interesting. There's a book written about the elephants, the last elephants of the Addo region, and they were hunted almost to extinction. There was eventually only one small breeding herd left, and that's now formed part of the tuskless gene. That still remain in the area, and they obviously weren't shot because they didn't have tusks. So the poachers or the ivory hunters at the time didn't shoot them because there was no point. So there was that one small breeding herd, and there was one big bull that was left. But he stayed in the Woody Cape region, right down near to the coast, which is near current day Alexandria. And there was one ranger that was appointed to go and protect him so that nobody killed him, because he was the last remaining of that gene. And so he spent a lot of time tracking and following this bull. And he was all alone. There were no other bulls. And he often found him at the beach, staring out over the ocean. And he couldn't understand why he was doing this. And then he would follow him back into the forest, but he would regularly come back to the beach and stand there and stare out over the ocean. And eventually he found that the elephant was actually communicating with whales. Every time that the elephant went down, once he had noticed this, he saw that there were pods of whales that were out at sea, and they were obviously at a very high pitch, squeaking under the water. and the elephant was rumbling back. So it was seeking out this kind of social contact and doing so with whales. And it's a wonderful book. And it's called Elephantums. So if you ever want to learn a little bit about that region of South Africa and the Eastern Cape and the last of the Addo elephants, and that bull that used to go and sit on the beach and chat to his whale friends, well, get reading. There's another book called The Elephant Whisperer, and it's a book by Lawrence Anthony, which is a touching memoir of a South African conservationist, Lawrence Anthony, and his wildlife game reserve in Zululand. And the book focuses on his taking in a herd of rogue wild elephants and the adventures that ensued, and the incredible connections Lawrence formed with them as they learned to trust him. So, Elephantums and The Elephant Whisperer. If you've got an inkling for elephants, or you want to find out more about them, or some fascinating stories, those are two lovely books to read.
Are you WildEarth's biggest fan? Then our Fan of the Month is a competition for you. Join our naturalists on Safari Live and listen out for weekly questions. To enter the competition, head over to our Instagram, search #WildEarthFan, and comment your answer under the post. The monthly winner will be determined by the total quickest and most correct answers, and will win a private virtual safari. We announce our winner at the end of every month. Tune in to Safari Live daily. WildEarth, it's in your nature.
So, and just going on the Addo elephants and their last remaining herd, I think it would be pertinent to also talk about the Neisner elephants. And there's a little write-up from mostly mammoths online that they say evidence suggests that the Cape South coast of South Africa supported a considerable elephant population during the Pleistocene era. Although at times during that period the enormous Paleo-Agulhas plain may have been inundated with water, it was often an open, sandy environment filled with dunes and beaches. Um, and then there's a lot of scientists that have described sites containing 400,000 to 80,000-year-old elephant footprints. And those trace fossils have survived on the significantly smaller remnants of that ancient plain today. Other proboscidean species, such as mammoths and mastodons, were alive in that same time frame in other parts of the world, but no fossil evidence of any earlier type of elephant has been found in South Africa younger than 400,000 years. And these scientists, as mentioned, they believe the fossil footprints were made by the African savanna elephant, or the Loxodonta africana, which is what we're seeing here as well. But that's not the end of the story. As wonderful and exciting as the many trace fossils are, the plight of the elephants in that area is, in direct contrast, profoundly alarming. The entire continent may have been home to about 20 million elephants before Europeans colonized it. Perhaps 3,000 of them roaming the Cape South coast. In less than 400 years, their numbers dropped precipitously. A mere 30 to 50 elephants existed at the beginning of the 20th century. And in 1925, there were just 12 left. And today, there's only one. For an intelligent social species to live in herds, a single elephant living in the wild is absolutely heartbreaking. She's 42-year-old, and like all other Neisner elephants, she lives within the Neisner forest. She tends to avoid open areas. She's not an African forest elephant or the Loxodonta cyclotis, despite her habitat in the forest. The scientists and the authors of lots of books contend that the Neisner elephants were forced into the local forests to avoid human contact. In a 2019 paper, lead author and wildlife ecology scientist at South African National Parks, Lizette Mullman, and her colleagues describe records of humans shooting elephants in the Southern Cape as far back as 1755. South Africa as a whole lost most of its elephant population due to increase in the number of humans and their farms, as well as the ivory trade. Once decimated, the Neisner elephants struggled to survive. They were given protection in 1908, and in 1994, new elephants from other areas were brought in, but despite all their efforts, nothing worked. Various theories have been proposed, from a suboptimal forest diet to reproductive problems to the increased vulnerability of a dwindling population. But the scientists suggest that we have much more to learn before we understand the reasons behind it. So the question is, would elephants have preferred the current Neisner elephant range if there were no anthropogenic threats and barriers? And is the current range the type of environment that will enhance a population or limit its fitness? We don't have the answer, but we can make assumptions based on historic distributions of elephants. And what they concluded in their research is that there's not enough evidence or data to support any hypothesis fully. My theory would be is that it's difficult for these individual elephants to adapt to a different environment very quickly and obviously to easily reproduce. For instance, if you had to take the Kruger elephants and plop them in the Namib Desert, they wouldn't do very well because of the lack of water resources and the real evolution of those individuals in the desert to be able to survive there. I think the same would be said if you take the desert elephants and you put them into the Kruger Park. They'd also have problems just for that real change. I think they'd find it easier than going the other way. But I think a forest environment is quite a specific environment and quite difficult to adapt to, as would be the desert. So I think just in that sense, it might need to be a bit of a slower acclimatization for us to ever have any kind of population there in the Knysna forest. But shame, there is that one elephant that remains in the Knysna forest. Jenna, I must agree with you, but I think the more that we study elephants, the more we can learn about them. I think the better we would be off as humans, especially in their social interaction and how they sort of politically organize themselves and still are successful within their different bonds, clans, and herds. I think just such wonderful animals. So this is the playground corner, it seems, and that little youngster getting blasted with mud. Lots and lots of fun. A bit of belly scratching is always in order as well. Look at that trunk being thrown around like a fire hydrant that's out of control. A pressurized hose pipe. And now it's a pileup. And of course, once again today, the most activity of all the water holes is here at Jamala. So if you're wondering why we're spending so much time here, it's because it's where there's the most going on. There we go. That youngster slapping the water with its trunk now. So Lewis, you say hello is from San Diego. Hello back at you. Lovely to have you on board with us. Hope you're enjoying the show. There we go. That log over there seems to be a favorite as a scratching post. Can get all the angles required. While this bull just slides on into the water.
Step into a world of discovery as you join Eco Training's renowned courses in the heart of Kenya's Masai Mara. These courses are the perfect way to gain a deep understanding of the African bush, even if you have limited time. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to experience the wild in a meaningful and life-changing way. Enroll today and embark on a transformative journey with Eco Training in Kenya's Masai Mara, the leading force in conservation education. So it looks like the scratch is over for Mommy and the little calf.
But that other youngster just trying to make the most of it, while the bull's still rolling around in the mud. Now, just watching these elephants having a scratch, but I've seen there's been a couple of incidents in multiple national parks, from the Kruger Park, also up in Kenya as well, with big bull elephants that have actually mounted vehicles and used them as a scratching post. But in the meantime, they've totally destroyed the vehicle and probably left the tourists that were inside feeling like they don't want to come out on a safari again. I actually saw a video of somebody quite recently. It went viral. And I think it was also in the Kruger National Park, and in one of the more touristy areas in the south, with where the tar roads are, and there's quite a good network of them. And there was a video posted by another tourist that was behind this vehicle, and there was a big bull elephant that approached a small sedan. I think it was something, just a small passenger vehicle. And the driver of the car, as the elephant approached, he stopped the car and proceeded to get out and run off into the bush. And this elephant looked perplexed and didn't know what in the world he was doing. And the people that were videoing were asking the same question. Yeah, because I think he left the relative safety of his car to try and make himself safer out in the bush. But yeah, it confused the elephant to no end. And not sure, and I hope that he got back safely, but I think he should think about his survival strategies, because that, for me, is definitely not a good idea, to go running off into the bush to try and get away from an elephant. But yeah, that happened, and it was posted online. So it looks like we're back to mainly bulls. In fact, I think it might all be bulls. I don't see any females now. So it's an all-male affair, and everybody's standing almost deadly still. I think there's probably lots of very wise conversations going on. Maybe they're discussing what happened last night and what they're going to be doing tonight on their forays into the bush. So we were always told when I was studying nature guiding and conservation that elephants walk on the whole of the foot. But I've proven this wrong because it was an unfortunate incident that occurred up in the northern part of the Kruger, where an elephant had to be put down because they charged a walking group. And there was no other way out. That was proven through the evidence. The rangers came to inspect and so on. So that the unfortunate trails guide had to put an elephant down to keep the group safe. Anyway, we went to go and inspect the site after it had been inspected. The sort of crime scene, as you would call it. After the Sandparks Rangers had inspected it and cleared the trails guide of any wrongdoing. And we got to have a look at the carcass, and it had been opened up by hyenas that had been feeding on. It opened up one of the legs, and I got to see the whole foot structure. And they don't walk on the whole of the foot. They walk on their fingers and their toes. So you would say that they digitigrade, as opposed to, primates. We all walk on the whole foot, so we call it plantigrade. And they would have said then if elephants walk on the whole foot, it's also plantigrade. And the cats and the dogs, they digitigrade, where they walk on their fingers, and the rest, the sort of palm and the heel is raised. And then the ungulates, they walk on, that's anguligrade. They walk right on the tips of their toes, with the ankle seemingly like the knee, and the knee right up, almost seemingly like the hip. So it's quite confusing with them. However, with elephants, they definitely walk on their fingers with their palm and their heels raised, according to the anatomy and the structure of the bones that I witnessed from that individual that had been opened up by the hyenas and the scavengers after it had unfortunately been put down. So I know for myself that the information that we learnt in guiding and in conservation management is incorrect. So that's why also a lot of the information that I have obtained through books and research, etc., I always try to, before claiming it as fact, try and witness it and experience it in person. When you speak of behaviors, etc., the same thing. I'd like to try and sort of prove it or disprove it. You always want to prove something right and find the evidence. And in this case, I tried to prove that the elephants are plantigrade and walk on the whole foot, and I couldn't, because the heel and the palm is raised, and that is fact. So if you look at the foot when they walk like this, the top of the foot or the ankle, you see this one walking now in the foreground, that ankle is where you would think is the knee. That's the ankle. So the whole foot, it's only on its fingers, and then that heel is the first part, and then the first joint that seems like a very low knee is in fact the ankle. So Bonnie, I grew up on a plot south of Johannesburg and it was in the Henley Klip, and we had the Klip River running at the bottom of our 3.5 acre garden, and on our plot we had geese, we had chickens, we had donkeys, we had dogs, cats. Not a lot of any of them, but we had a whole range of animals. So I've always had an affinity with them because I've always been around them. And then obviously, so that was the domestic animals. But then with the river that was at the end of our garden, obviously I got into camping and fishing and camping. I said that. So it just sort of created a love for being outdoors. Whether it was with the domestic animals, we often used to try and ride. We had 2 female donkeys, and one year the older female, she got out, and we brought her back, and it was about 9 months later, and she surprisingly had a baby. And it was a male. We called him Bart. His mother's name was Emily. And it was funny because as I was growing up, so was this little male donkey. And all my friends and myself, we were forever trying to break it in, as you would say, and ride it. Because we could ride the mother. She was she was actually rescued from riding donkey carts. So she was very placid, and you could sit on her quite comfortably, and she wouldn't even move. It was actually quite boring because she never went anywhere. But Bart, he was wild. So we used to always try and jump on his back and see how long we could ride him. Well, I can tell you that there were lots of injuries that came from then. I remember landing square on my head after being catapulted off the back of him at about 60 kilometers an hour. And if you've ever ridden a donkey, you know that they're not quite as rhythmic as horses. So you can't sort of clop, 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 and bounce up and down nicely. It's you're bouncing every sort of millisecond almost. And when he kicks out the back legs, it sort of throws you over the front. So yeah, that was something we were always trying to do. We were also always down on the boat fishing and seeing what we could catch, and then birding from there. And then I think that was sort of the real introduction into wildlife. And from there, then I studied conservation management, and then from there immediately headed up to Namibia and was into overland safaris. Which led into more specialist 4x4 camping safaris and lodge tours right throughout the country. So that then opened the door for me to know all the different regions of Namibia, then coming back to South Africa and training guides in the greater Kruger area, and then down into the Eastern Cape. So I've never really stayed in one spot for too long, not because I haven't been able to keep a job. It's because a lot of the jobs that I've had has either been freelance or it's been on safaris as part of a bigger overland tour. So I've really been able to get around and tour and experience a lot of these places, and that's why I've been able to speak from experience and having sort of changed through all these different national parks. So I think that's put me in good stead in being able to narrate and understand the animals from personal experience in all these different areas.
Whether you're a retiree, a recent graduate, or a professional seeking a change, the 55-day Eco Training program is for you. With the coaching of experienced training guides, you'll embark on an unforgettable adventure that will give you a deep understanding of wildlife, conservation, and African cultures. If you sign up locally or internationally using this promo code, you'll receive 2,000 Rand off.
So even since yesterday, this water level has dropped because where that elephant has just come out of the water now and gone onto that bit of land, it was an island yesterday, and now it's sort of not really an island anymore. It goes all the way through to the rocks there, and the water level has dropped quite significantly, and you can notice it now. But I'm sure still water replenishing, and hopefully it's going to cool down in the coming days, and then this water hole will probably be able to fill up a bit without having the pressure that it has had over the last week. So just a note for all the viewers is that from the 1st of December, which is Friday, I believe, WildEarth is going to be shifting things around a bit in terms of the schedule of the different programs, and Live at the Waterhole will be running from 11:30 to 4 as opposed to 10:30 until 3. I think we currently run. So a little bit of a change there. Remember that, Live at the Waterhole from 11:30 to 4, and then the Sunset Safari will be from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock Central African time. So, Neil, thanks for your lovely comment and that you've been enjoying the show. Well, obviously, then we're doing a good job. So, fantastic. We'll just keep trying on doing exactly that and keeping it fresh, keeping it unique, and trying to obviously approach whatever subjects that you would like to as well. So, keep on sending it through. That's awesome. So Tina, yes, you're absolutely right. It is remarkable how how still they are and for how long. And as I say, I think just down to energy conservation, especially during this heat, they don't want to be wasting any of those calories that they will have to go and replenish by feeding. So it takes a lot of energy to do so, and they need energy to be able to feed. So they can't sort of run down redlining into that reserve because, then they can almost go past the point of no return. And so they do need to bear this in mind. And that's why you see a lot of the youngsters a lot more active than the adults, and why the mothers don't spend too long. They need to almost head back and make sure that they're in areas of good feed, as well as not hanging around when there's too many of these bulls, because there is then risk for injury if then any of them become a bit boisterous, etc. So different dynamics are really playing out in front of us, and the real relaxed nature of the bulls, especially the adults, is quite clear to see. So, and just an understanding of the location of this Waterhole camera itself, it is literally at the Jamala Lodge. And when our camera went out of control a little bit earlier, you may have seen a little bit of the lodge and the people. So you may hear some chatter at sometimes, you might hear some unnatural noises. Generally, the animals don't react to it at all, but also just an understanding from your side so that you know exactly why you may hear some other noises other than wildlife.
I started watching WildEarth during COVID. I decided that I wanted to study more, and I saw that Eco Training Pridelands was doing courses, and I decided to do the 8-week online theory course at the end of last year. There's just so much out there to learn and to experience.
Sign up for an Eco Training digital course today with the promo code to receive 200 Rand off.
So, and it's obviously also the middle part of the day is generally a lot more quiet, especially from the birds as well as insects, etc. It's also down to this energy conservation. The hotter it is, the less your voice travels. So if birds call in the middle of the day, it's very often also a lot more windy. So you're wasting energy at that time for the same outcome or a less of an outcome. Or you have to put more energy in to have the same outcome of your voice traveling. So generally, you'll have the birds calling when it's nice and cool in the early mornings, late afternoons. Your voice travels further, the air is more dense, and you don't need to waste as much energy to get the same message across. So generally, middle of the day, a lot more quiet, as you'll be witnessing now. But if we were at the same spot in the early morning and late afternoon, we'd probably have a lot more noise as a result of the birds, etc., that are more active, especially in calling. So just a reminder that at 12 o'clock, the YouTube show will be ending, but you can head on over to the WildEarth app. You can go to the WildEarth website. You can go on DSTV. So there's lots of other platforms for you to be able to watch the show continuing. And also, we'll also be bringing in the Africam Waterholes too. So we'll be switching it up a little bit from there on. Now it's a wonderful sort of prospect with how all of, with technology, all of these remote cameras and including the Africam water holes, but a lot of game reserves and wilderness areas are starting to employ the same strategy, and people then being able to watch these water holes from all over the world. And you can continue watching Africam waterholes that we will have on the show, but those run continuously on the Africam website as well. So if this interests you and excites you and you find a waterhole that you really enjoy, then you can obviously go and carry on watching. I think it's great in the aspect of just education for people and being able to see what wild animals actually get up to. And there's a lot of myths and fallacies and the way that people think of wildlife, and they can experience it for themselves. It does assist as well as when more people can see these animals in these spots. They can also report any kind of untoward behavior, whether there's animals with snares or if there's any animals stuck in a waterhole. We can all get involved. So it brings an extra sort of side to it too. So a bit of a younger bull there on the right, I think heading towards the scratching post now. Gets stuck in once more. So Sandra, yeah, I agree with you. Even when they stand still, they are amazing. But it's when they're standing still that I find them the most intriguing, because you want to know what they're thinking, what are they saying. But some things are better left unknown, because if we had to know exactly, maybe it wouldn't be that interesting. But I think it would be. I'd love to be able to understand elephants and be able to hear everything that they're saying as well. It would just open up another avenue of and aspect of the wild. Imagine the stories they could tell. So in just a little while, we're going to be introducing the Africam waterholes as well. And first up, we'll be going to the Africam Rosie's Pan, and that's in the Greater Kruger National Park. So you've got that to look forward to. It's been a wonderful start here at Jamala. I'm sure at some stage we'll be coming back, because there's just been so much activity here, especially from the elephants. But also good to go and see what's happening at all the other locations.